going through, and her father, and like they burn, you know. In Seneca, it's sort of surprising, you know, because you think, oh well, you know, well, the Romans want to hear all this. But he doesn't. The messenger, kind of in Seneca, it's on page 164. You know, the first chorus of church says, "Tell us what happens," and he says, "A trick. Explain yourself." It's like, okay, we're going to get this great monologue. It's like, no, the trick that can take can take a king, treacherous gifts. Second chorus, treacherous how? You aren't telling us much. The messenger says, what is there to tell of such absolute ruin? Well, Euripides had a lot to tell, you know. The fire rages, the house is fallen, the city burns and quakes with terror. They say, well, let's water be brought. And he says, but that's the trouble. Water feeds these flames, and they only burn the brighter. Nature's undone, right? She's got like holy fire that can't be put out with water.
Water.
And then the nurse says to my lady, flee at once, you can still get away. Go at once, wherever you will, but go. The nurse is kind of sympathetic to her in the Seneca. The nurse, which is the leader of the chorus, has now taken, Euripides has started this to some way in terms of how the leader of the chorus becomes much and more the confidant character. And Seneca takes it even further in terms of the nurse, the confidant, which is, you know, the best friend of the main character. You know, is how this leader of the chorus is going to start to evolve. So why doesn't Seneca have the messenger say this terrible speech of the princess and the king's death? Why, do you think?
Because he doesn't want to... I don't know.
Does she maybe want that?
He's reading it, right, in Nero's palace, to the aristocrats, to the people who basically are the king and the daughter.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think he would want... Like,
He's talking about them burning in this horrible death. He's talking about
So you're just going to
Medea.
gloss over it really quick.
It's like, it's why Calderon is not going to write Life is a Dream about the usurpation of a throne and set it in Spain, played to the Spanish king. He's going to set it in Poland. Medea's successful annihilation of the king, you know, and the princess, of the rulers.
yeah.
You're not going to say that in a court where, you know, they're saying this is the death of the king. You refer to it, but you're not going to describe it to them. It's like, wait, you're describing us, right? They are the rulers. So it's a little subtle thing that the messenger is not going to do this.
That's why he didn't win first place.
Huh?
It's
Seneca?
like- no,
Oh, well, it's right,
yeah.
Euripides. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's saying when Pentheus gets killed, you know, though they did give him first place for that, and actually Sophocles and Euripides died in the same year, 2 years before the fall of Troy. They died in the same year. Euripides died first, Sophocles, he was a decade younger. Sophocles died later the same year. But Sophocles in his play dressed, and the Bacchae was performed after Euripides was dead, and he kind of got a first prize in memorial for his whole career. And Sophocles in his play, because he was also competing there, and lost to Euripides, I think gladly, dressed his whole chorus in black to honor Euripides. Lucius. Really, that's kind of who Sophocles was. He was very elegant. But you know, that's Medea. Medea's an earlier play of Euripides too. So it's like, don't talk about the leaders of the city dying because of this foreign witchcraft. Yeah. But he did.
Yeah.
So it's like, imagine yourselves burning like that. You know, whoever was in his mind in Athens, or the audience's mind of what they were thinking of, we'd like to see those people, you know. That was, Euripides was a little suspect. Yeah, he was a bit radical. But Euripides also, and if you look at his Electra, you know, as compared to Sophocles' Electra, It's really like in Sophocles, Electra, has this kind of, desire. She has the Electricon. She loves her father. She sort of somewhat, says to Orestes, she's more the motor of it. In Aeschylus, and that was another. We had another class. I would love to look at the different Electras because they're so different in terms of how Aeschylus portrays her, where she's kind of just, the sidekick to Orestes, whereas Sophocles, she really starts taking much more of a part, and she even has a scene with her sister that's almost identical to the scene Antigone and Ismene have. Sophocles gives her a sister, oh God, what's her name? It just flew out of my head. Anyway, I'll remember it. But her sister she has a scene that's almost identical to the Antigone Ismene scene, where Ismene's going, no, you can't, and she's saying, yes, I'm going to do this. So she's much more a motor, and they kind of do it more in tandem. Whereas in Euripides, Electra has been married off to a peasant, right? And she's like, the peasant is very noble. And the peasant hasn't touched her, and the peasant says, no, you shouldn't carry the water or wear bad clothes. That's not, I know you were sent to me, married to me, to humiliate me, to humiliate you, and to get rid of the bloodline, but I'm not going to take your virginity, and I don't want you to do the work, and I can have you dress decently and she says, no, I want to show how miserable I am, and then she sends a message to her mother saying, oh, I'm giving birth, to the peasant, our first child, and the mother comes to see the baby, it's maybe sort of happy to be grandma, but also okay, you've had a child with the peasant, that means, your lineage now is not going to be an issue, it's not going to be competitive or a danger to me. But, Electra lures her there, and Orestes in the Euripides play is kind of going, I don't know, I want to kill my mother. That's kind of screwed up, and aren't I going to be punished? Electra's saying, what's the matter? You got to kill her, I hate her. And she has these clothes, and I don't have that. And it's like, she's like a whiny teenager in Euripides,
Yeah.
And it's all about her kind of anger at her mom, It's very modern. She's like a teenager. She's almost like a modern teenager, just mad that her mom won't let her, do what she wants in a weird way. Euripides makes them very petty. He makes everybody petty. Orestes is kind of whiny, and Electra's kind of, I hate mom. And Clytemnestra gets a little bit more of her dignity back. You kind of feel for her. And Aegisthus, he's like making libations, and Orestes kills him at the altar, making libations. Aegisthus is guilty, but he kind of understands why he did it. And it's like, okay, this whole family is screwed up, and the only one who has any moral integrity is the peasant. Which is a huge thing at this time for a statement for Euripides to do. Euripides is also going to do the thing where some of it's funny. The peasant's kind of funny. In Helen, when he writes Helen, he's going to write the play about the myth that the real Helen really didn't go to Troy. It was an apparition that went to Troy. It was like Iphigenia wasn't really sacrificed, She was swept away and went to Taurus, which he also writes. Two glorious Iphigenia plays. One where you really see Agamemnon much more sympathetically portrayed and saying, I don't want to do this to my daughter, for my brother. You're like, control your wife, man, that's not my problem that we're all going to go on after your wife, and my wife's going to be really mad at me, and it's like, I don't want to do it, and Menelaus says, no, we have to, and then at a certain point, Agamemnon realizes if he doesn't do it, his troops really want to go to war. They want to go and get spoils and the glory of war. And if he's going to, he has to sacrifice his daughter, but his wife is freaking out at him, and Achilles is coming and saying, what? You told her to get her here, you said that she was going to marry me? It's like, I'm insulted, you're using me. What? Menelaus, and I'm going to defend her. I'm going to be here with my Myrmidons, and we're going to defend you against the rest of the Greek army from all these other, thousands of soldiers that are going to be launched on 1,000 ships. And I'm going to defend her. And then Iphigenia in that play, she's like Jules. She's a precursor to Julian. She goes, okay, everyone, all this, this is not going to happen because of me. I'm going to go to my death. I'm going to solve this I'm going to go willingly to the sacrifice. Achilles, you can stop grandstanding. Dad, you can stop being put in this hard place of Ate, that no matter what you do, you're screwed. I'm going to go to death. Mom, it's going to be okay. I'm going to go to my death. She's like 14, 15 years old. And she makes this decision that she's going to go to the sacrifice. So Euripides, before Shakespeare writes this young teenage girl that you kind of go, whoa. Euripides writes this young teenage girl who's like, wow. Euripides writes a peasant that is much more noble than any of the aristocratic, family around him that's all doing this curse that they're doing. And he's just kind of going, okay, how do we, do this? So, but in Helen, Euripides does the thing that she's whisked away. So in Troy, there's a fake Helen. And the real Helen is living on the shores of Egypt. And Menelaus gets blown. He gets blown around the sea. The reason in the Oresteia, they say, where's Menelaus? I don't know. His ship's being blown away. And the satyr play, the comedic play that's actually part of the tetralogy, that's the Oresteia, is called Proteus, which is about Menelaus, a comedy about Menelaus arriving on some island with this shape-changing god, Proteus. But in the Euripides play, Helen, Menelaus gets blown to the north of Egypt, and there he finds his wife, his real wife, not the wife that was in Troy, but the real wife that, he thought, oh, you're here. Io comes and visits her, and it's like a comedy. It's not really a tragedy. It's sort of like, there's sad things that happen, but it's really the comedy of Helen stuck in Egypt. Ellen McLaughlin wrote a version of it, which Tony Kushner directed really badly, by the way. He said after he directed, he said, I'm never going to direct again. I'm obviously not a director. But it's a really fun version. Ellen McLaughlin's done several versions of the Greek plays that are really interesting to look at. She's the original Angel in Angels in America. She's an actress, but she's also a playwright and writes really interesting not contemporary spins, but kind of McLaughlin. She's worth looking at, too. And McLaughlin. And I have some of them if you're interested, and I can send them to you. But she's got a collection of plays. She's published her collection of plays. I've worked with her on a couple. She did a version of The Persians. She did Develop Trojan Women at Fordham. So she's really interesting. But so Euripides is like doing all these really radical things, right? So he's just taking this quantum leap forward in the middle of classical Greece to kind of modern ideas. And I think, again, there's something about him that makes, that's all these more plays of his survived. Now, we don't know if some of the other writers were also doing things that are similar. We just don't have enough information. But the whole idea that these plays survived, people think of an indication that they survived because people thought they were worth hanging on to. So let's look at how Euripides deals with the murder, right? And let's compare it to Seneca. So we're not going to read this whole incredible messenger speech. The film of Medea, I think I sent you a link. It's really worth looking at if you have time. The messenger speech is read over actual them burning and whatever. They filmed the whole thing with the messenger speech on top of it. So let's go to page 71. Do we have someone willing to leap into Medea?
In Seneca?
Oh, no, let's look at the Euripides first.
Oh.
That's 71. Let's look at the Euripides first so we have a point of contrast. Medea, Medea. Medea, Medea.
Okay.
Yeah, come on. So, leader of the chorus.
Okay.
Justice personified this day has brought on Jason's head. Oh, we have seen it, the richest retribution. But it is you we weep for. Poor, blighted child of Creon, walking through the gates of death because you married Jason. They're really sad about the bride, right? That's,
Now, friends, to complete this mission with dispatch, to slay my children and hurry from the land, I must not dawdle and betray my sons to much more savage hands than mine to kill. There's no way out. They have to die. And since they must, let me be the one to cut them down. The very one who gave them life.
Right. So before, when the princess was still alive, there was a chance, oh, these cute little kids and whatever. But once she's dead, this has happened. It's like, these are the kids, right, that brought her. And you get a sense that somehow she had the decision to trigger this poison or not. You know, you wonder, you know, did she put on it? Was something happen? Was there some sort of power that she had that made the poison? It wasn't just the poison that they put on. Did she make some sort of decision at some point that maybe the poison would have worked or would not have worked? I always wonder about that because it seems like at some point, it doesn't happen when she puts it on, that it happens at a certain moment that's tied into a choice in Medea's mind. I mean, I always wonder about that because people usually say the poison is there and she puts it on, but the way the text is, and I haven't seen it done this way, and I actually think in close reading of the text, something in her decision triggers the poison. Now you know, that there's something about now the spell is cast, that it won't work unless she does that final thing saying, yes, I'm going to put it in motion. And that we witness her doing that somehow. That decision is when the princess bursts in fire, not just the poison that's in the cloak. That makes sense, or in the diadem. I mean, it's just a choice that one would make in terms of her power. But it's like in here she says, okay, now you don't have a choice. You are the ones that gave her the gift. You're dead. The children are dead. They're not going to be alive. They're not going to be servants. They're dead, and they might be torn apart and sacrificed and go, who knows what can happen. Is one way to look at this, right? Yeah.
But isn't this speech after the messenger has just spent 3 pages describing this whole...
Yeah, that's what she's saying. Now this has happened, and now you're dead. See what I'm saying? Earlier, she was saying you could stay, whatever. She liked the gift. There was an implication that this wasn't going to happen. And then earlier, she kind of says, now the diadem. When she says, no, I can't go with them. I can't, leave them or go with them. It seems that there's another decision reversal that has happened. Yes, now they're dead because this has happened. And it's been confirmed to have happened. She might not have known whether the magic worked or not until the messenger comes. Then she knows for sure that it's worked, and that seals that fate. So it's like, well, what are you going to do, right? You've done this. She made that decision to do it earlier. We saw her vacillate and make it, and now it's like, what is she going to do with the kids? Continue.
Yes, heart, be steel. Why vacillate? The act is necessary as it is cruel and hard. Come, reluctant hand. Grip the sword. Grip it, Medea. Cross your borderline of lifelong pain.
Cross your borderline of lifelong pain.
Away this flinching, away this longing. Consign to obliviate the love you have for them, the children of your flesh. Even when you kill them,
they are dear.
They are dear. Oh, my sons, I am in despair.
Medea with the nurse, mutely following in tears, passes into the house. Right. And then the chorus kind of prays for something, anything, for some God to come and stop this. And no God is going to come and stop this. There's not that deus ex machina, right? There's a deus ex machina of Medea herself that her chariot comes with the dragons. But
I have a question just before I forget. Why does she say she's the daughter of the sun?
because that's
She's the
she is.
grandson.
She is the daughter of Helios. Yes, yes.
Granddaughter?
The granddaughter,
Granddaughter.
granddaughter of the sun god.
That's why the
changes-
chorus is.
She's like a
Yeah.
quadra
Which I
god.
think ties into like the whole witchcraft thing.
Yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
comes in the end. The
Yeah.
sun, the
The
chariot,
sun, yeah.
the chariot of the sun
Seneca.
comes to take
But
her.
after betraying her family, I would think that would be
Yeah.
kind of a leap.
But her family, it's not her like you said, it's not her grandfather.
So that's
she's,
why
and the priestess, she's still, She goes back. She redeems. She goes back. you
So
know.
that's why the chorus in Euripides always prays to the sun.
Yeah. Well, it's a double thing because it's the Greek and
Yeah, it's a Greek.
and her.
Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah,
Because
it's
they
both.
both worship the
And they
sun.
change it again
It's the
for-
same.
In Seneca, it's Helio, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah.
It's to
Because
be-
it's Rome.
Yeah.
So it's the Greek sun
Yeah.
god. Right. It's not the Roman.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then, listen, a shout from the boys. Oh, what can we do? Our mother is on us. For you hear the boys, right? And when Deborah Warner did this with Fiona Shaw, they did a very famous production in New York a few years ago, which was set kind of in a modern setting. And in the backyard, it had a little kiddie pool in the backyard and glass things in the house, one of those suburban houses, it was kind of an upper class family. And, she was an amazing thing because we watched her chase the kids behind the glass of the house. And then she came out, actually. It was a little bit of a Seneca, touch in the Euripides when she comes out with the kids, one under each arm, and they're all bloody. She washes them in the kiddie pool. And she's there in the kiddie pool washing them. And Jason comes back.
I heard people left the theater sick.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
physically
it was so real because it was like Andrea. It was like it was like one of these suburban women killing her kids. It was okay, we're watching this happen. And she had this scene with Jason, it comes to the end of the play, and it's almost like it was all about their kind of S&M relationship. And it was sort of like at the end, it was the most, I went, okay, I can't deal with this. At the end, she's kind of going, okay, your turn. And doing the water on him, the bloody water from his children in the pool. That is standing in the little kiddie pool, kind of going, okay. Just inside, like water, like flirtatiously with the water. And we're going, oh my God.
She's doing that on who? Onto Jason.
Onto Jason. He's standing there looking at the kids floating in the pool and the water. And she goes, like you do, like you do with splashing your lover that you're having a tiff with. It was all about their fucked up relationship.
How did they have her exit? They didn't have.
They didn't have her exit. The lights went down on her kind of going. Well, there was no Deus Ex Machina. The play ended with her kind of doing this to Jason. And the whole audience is going, okay, I think that's brilliant, but I really hate it, but I kind of love it, but
get me
we
out of
hate
here.
you, Deborah Warner, but you're really brilliant. It was a hugely controversial production because it was so real and just fucked up and wow.
You sent us that link, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work?
It doesn't work. They pulled
I
it
didn't see that
off.
one. Oh.
They pulled it offline because of, actor unions. It's like you're not supposed to have that. There's another link of them talking about it, but yeah. So what time is it? Do we have time let's look at Seneca. Oh, yes, we do. We have plenty of time. Okay. So that gives this is not Medea.
Yeah.
She's torn. She's vulnerable. We feel for her. The chorus is like, okay, we kind of feel for the princess right now, but
Not really.
he presents her as really human. She's an ate. What do you want? What is she supposed to do? Right? So let's look at this moment in Seneca. So yeah, it is kind of like on 165. So who wants to do Seneca Medea? Seneca Medea?
I'll do it.
All right. Yay! Ashley, let's go for it. Okay. 165 in the Seneca. Yeah. My lady, flee at once. You can still get away. Go at once wherever you will, but go.
Me, go, but surely not. Had I gone before this, I would come back to look and listen to savor my instant.
Every
But
instant,
it's-
right? Every instant she wants to savor, right?
But it's not done, started only. There's more and better and better. I fear merely the skin's initial tingle of those first steps of a long journey. My stride is not yet reached. There is much to dare and endure. The vengeance is only started. That love I felt for Jason is not yet spent. It has turned to hatred and seethes like lava. I must be stronger than a rock. Honor is gone in all proportion. Nothing can touch my pure purpose or tame my spirit. The strength I have summoned is great, and my only duty now is to use it to wring the last cry of pain from the man's throat. What I have done thus far was nothing, a preface, a light-hearted overture. The serious business that follows will make my famous dark deeds seem like parlor tricks for children, or a girl's pranks. Now I am an angry woman. I am Medea. My apprentice term completed, I shall address myself to a masterwork. Anyone can cut a brother's head off. That happens every day. And people steal their father's treasure and run away. That's common. Hardly enough to arouse particular comments at the village well. To arrange that an old man's daughter should inflict on their father or a horrible death shows promise, but in relative terms is nothing. For I shall do now such dreadful, such astonishing things.
Now this is Rome. This is Rome where they're in the Colosseum and Christians are being thrown to the lions and people are watching blood sports in the public theaters. This is being read. This is not what's entertainment in Rome. Entertainment in Rome is executions and fighting to the death and people running away from being torn apart by wild animals. So when Medea is saying people cut off their, brothers' heads every day, she's right. This is nothing in Rome at this point. It is nothing in a Rome that's heading towards destruction and about to fall, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's about the body count. It's like the body count films. It's like, what do we get in terms of like, when this country televises executions,
Oh my God.
that's when we're going to go down this road.
We
Go
are.
ahead.
The children are the way to reach him. Had he and Crucia offspring, anyone could make a respectable plan.
Yeah, it goes on. It's like Seneca arias. Do you have it?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
166.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What I must do is acknowledge the bitter truth of what he did, taking my 2 sons from me and claiming them as his own, their own. No longer my children? Very well, it's hard, but they shall pay for their father's crimes, and as happens often in the vile world. My brain's cold logic chills my heart. My limbs flutter, the rage gives away, and a mother's concern returns unbidden and altogether wrong. You heard him say it. He could keep them for himself. They are not mine. Their blood is not my blood. I will abide by my Lord's decree, and we'll see if he can stand it. They'll be better off. Who would endure with a father like that? With a mother like this? Better be rid of such unspeakable past and future. They'll die innocent. That happens too in the world.
They'll die innocent, right? This has been a reason that we hear from, like, oh my God, my children are, like the devil is going to get them or whatever, and I have to protect them. If anyone's going to get them, I'm the one that's going to take them out of the misery or take them out of living with me, or autism, and their state, and I'll kill myself too, or like there's a lot of things in terms of like the demons are going to get them, so I have to kill them so they can remain pure, or they're going to go down this terrible life, and so I have to save them from this terrible life. These are reasons in contemporary society that we've heard women give. Yeah.
That happens too in the world. My brother was innocent too, but much good did that do him. My tears are a nonsense, not for him or for them, but only for myself. An indulgence. They will not deter or delay me for more than that instant it takes to wipe my face with a fist already clenched. Love them? I have. I do. And will after they're dead. Much good will that do them for or me. It's hard, but either way, I lose them. I have lost all, have nowhere to turn but strike back, piling griefs upon griefs as exaction for mine. Love them. They would have been my solace, their hands soothing my troubled brow, their kisses healing my wounds. He took them from me. Now I will take them. Tear them from him, and his tears will gush hotter than mine. Children, come here. I swept Neil Niobe's tears for sons, not 7 but 2, only the 2. But now they shall have at least a younger brother, as I tear from my womb a monstrous vengeance, kin of my dead father and dead brother. Our blood shows itself in awful profusion.
So she's like talking about that she's going to give birth to vengeance. That's going to be their brother. And this is interesting because, again, when you think about, a character like Lady Macbeth, and a lot of the Elizabethan writers are going to be really they're going to be more influenced by Seneca than they are by the Greeks, because they read Latin. Not all of them read Greek. Like Shakespeare's famous line, he said, he spoke Greek. Well, what did he say? I don't know. It was Greek to me, right? That comes from Shakespeare. And like the big thing is that they were reading Latin in the schools in England at that time, and in the churches where, it was still being in Latin. A lot of them, though it was moving away with the Church of England. But the whole idea of like these young writers were reading Seneca, and this very much influenced the Elizabethan thing of revenge and the revenger tragedy, the sort of interest in the revenger tragedy style that Shakespeare is going to play with in Hamlet. We're going to talk about that when we talk about Shakespeare. But T.S. Eliot is going to say, no Elizabethan hero dies without the stench of Seneca. Because it's like this kind of it's kind of bombastic and about, they're arias. He writes really long arias for his characters, and they're melodramatic, and that's the criticism of Seneca. But they're fun to do, to perform, because they're just out there. They just go really out there. Okay, keep going.
The Furies assemble, waving their torches. The garish light.
Furies.
The garish light stains all the world with blood. A hellish host dances, cabarets, while serpents writhe and coil, lashing their tails. Whom does
Megara.
Who does Megara seek? These children? Jason? Me? Does it matter? My brother, my poor brother, Absyrtus calls out for justice, with each of his scattered limbs, as if they had mouths, a whole chorus complaining. And they shall be paid abundantly. Thrust the burning brands here to my breast. Tear, burn, and hurt, however they will. There's nothing I cannot endure.
Right? Lady Macbeth? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Real similarity. Okay. The 2 sons enter.
Yes, my children, come here.
To the elder son.
You will go to your uncle, who asked for you a solution to all our problems.
She kills him. Right? So this is like, if it's a stage, it's like violence right there on stage. And she doesn't say, let me kiss your face, whatever. It's like, okay, this has been made. You're going to go to your uncle. Phew, bang, you're dead. Okay. So she's got the younger one who's just seen his mother kill his brother, right? It's like, okay. So she kills him.
Accept this victim, ghost, and be appeased.
There's noises coming.
What is that sound? Armed men coming to kill me? It won't be so easy.
To the younger son.
Come, we'll go to the roof. Don't be afraid, we'll stay together.
To the corpse.
And you'll come with us too.
To herself.
Oh, my soul, be strong. This isn't some piece of secret business, but grand and public, and I must do it with proper flair.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when people say Medea, it's Seneca's Medea a lot of times that people are thinking about, right? The witch, the vengeful kind of like she's just, consumed by passion. And that's the way, her character has kind of, in a way, in popular imagination or understanding of her, is Seneca's Medea that's kind of thought of a lot of times. It's very different than Euripides' Medea. Yeah.
I mean, throughout the play, I would almost argue that Medea, in Seneca's version, was like out of her mind.
Yeah.
She was out of her mind with passion, where you could see, like in
That's
Euripides,
exactly
she
right.
clearly went back and forth,
Right.
so she didn't think about it, even though
Right.
it was still the same decision.
Right. And this is the difference between the 2 societies that are being reflected. Because we're talking about that whole idea that, what the plays are, in a way, is Perseus' shield. Where one can see the reflection of the Medusa of the world without being turned into stone. The Medusa of what's happening in Athens was bad enough. The Medusa of what's happening in Rome right now is beyond horrific. It's Nero, right? Who Seneca was his tutor, who Nero is going to order to kill himself. Seneca's going to kill himself on Nero's orders.
Also, something that I thought about when I read Seneca is that in Seneca, Creon she's not going to keep her sons.
Right.
Whereas in Euripides, she gets to keep them. So in that case, I understand that she's deranged, but when I first was reading it, I thought Seneca's Medea was more justifiable because she wasn't going to have her children. That's what until I read the end.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Which is interesting.
That she doesn't have a choice.
Yeah,
as much in the
yeah,
Seneca.
as in the other one, she
Right.
talks to Aegeus and like almost.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't a character.
No, there's
like
not a
that
Jesus
in
that
Seneca.
gives her
Yeah.
a way out. And that's a really interesting link to the story because he's come to her in the Euripides. It's the way it connects, it's much more layered, because there's this other story that's connected and seeded. It's seeded. I'm sure Euripides wrote a play about Theseus and Medea. I'm sure he did. Because this is a setup for it. And I bet that there was one that he continued the story because he seeds it in here.
Yeah.
The whole thing about Aegeus is that he comes in Euripides to Medea because she's a sorceress, right? And he can't have he can't have children.
She promised.
Son, right?
Yeah.
So she's going to give him a potion that's going to have him, let him have sons. But she warns him. She says, don't unloose the wine sack. Don't unloose, your prick from your, and have sex before you get back to Athens. Don't impregnate another woman on the way home when he's going up, from the Peloponnese, from Thebes to Athens, right? But he happens to go to Troezen and has a little fling in Troezen with someone who ends up bearing him a child who is named, anyone know? Theseus. This is pre-Theseus, the great Greek golden shining hero, more golden even than Achilles. He's going to unloose it, and he's going to give birth to Theseus. He's going to keep his promise to Medea. She's going to end up at Athens at his court. And then when Theseus arrives, because he's left his sword and a brooch there, to discover his parent, and he makes the crossing over the little narrow isthmus that joins, the Peloponnesian Peninsula to the rest of Greece, killing all the robbers that do things like strap you to the bed, and either pull you to make you longer, cut off your legs to make them fit the bed, and all these notorious robbers. And he's becoming a hero, becoming legendary as he goes and kind of cleans up Greece on his way to Athens. And then he's just there, and Medea recognizes him, realizes who he is, and realizes that he's trouble in the court, that she's going to displace her, and she tries to poison him, like Claudius, with the wine, just like Claudius puts a little thing in there that's going to poison, says, drink this. And Aegeus then realizes that he's got the sword and the brooch that he left, and realizes it's his son, and knocks the goblet out of Theseus' hand before he drinks, and looks at Medea, and she goes, oh crap, and she gets into her chariot, and she goes back to Asia. That's the last we see of her. But it's interesting because that's where it's seated. And Theseus is the one that's going to go to Crete as part of the tribute, because that's what's happening. Right now, Athens is in control. This is prehistory. Crete is the dominant force in the Mediterranean. And so when Theseus kills the Minotaur with the help of Andromache, and little girl Phaedra, her sister, who's totally entranced with Theseus, who later, when his son that he has with Hippolytus is there in Troezen, where Theseus was conceived, where he has his other kingdom, where he marries and leaves Phaedra, and his son Hippolytus shows up looking like Theseus did when he was a young man. And Theseus isn't around, and there's Phaedra with this young man who looks like Theseus at that age, and closer to his age than she is to Theseus, who's gone. Set up for Phaedra, for the play, the play Phaedra? The older, the woman falling in love with her stepson. But then Theseus comes back. He's told his father Aegeus, who's the rescuer of Medea, that he's going to change the the sails, the black sails on the ship, if it's been successful, he forgets to change the sails. His father is on a high mountain promontory overlooking the sea, and he sees the black sails, and he goes, oh my God, it's failed. My son is dead. We're still under the power of Crete. Ugh. And he goes, I can't bear it. And he throws himself into the sea, which is then named the Mediterranean. And there's the Ionian Sea, named for Io, the cow that runs around it. And then there's the Mediterranean. And then right up there near Greece, it's called the Aegean. The Aegean Sea, because Aegeus throws himself. All the names that are connected to all these Greek myths that still exist. Yeah. So he throws himself into the sea, and it becomes the Aegean. But all these little stories are connected, and of this sort of the ramp, the ramp of this history, the ramp of the Greek identity. Just the way Shakespeare in the history plays, and a lot of the Elizabethan writers he's going to write the history plays, which give the ramp to Elizabethan England. The whole, what's called War of the Roses cycle, is all to justify the Tudor line, to justify the fact that Henry VIII usurped, in some ways, the throne. But that lineage of the Tudors, that when Richard III is maligned, his line ends. This piece of propaganda. So we think of Richard III historically as the way Shakespeare drew him. It wasn't true. He showed Richard III that way because he had to justify Henry Bolingbroke, being taken over, Henry II, taking over the lineage and justify the Tudor line that comes into being. So it's interesting. So these Greek plays and the Greek myths are all like giving a pride in the national story, in the mythology of a people, in the sort of saying, this is where we evolved from. These are how our ideas evolved. This is our mythology. This is the story we tell ourselves to justify ourselves to some extent. This is why when Rome came into power, basically Augustus Caesar commissioned this poet named Virgil to write the Aeneid, the story of Aeneas, who runs away from Troy and saying the Roman lineage is connected to Troy. And this is the book that's going to be as great as the Iliad and the Odyssey were. We're going to write this story. So it's like the writing of our stories, as somebody writes the stories that we believe in, that are, that define our morality and our definitions of our identity. And what's so interesting, I hope you can come see Josh's piece, because what he talks about at the beginning and what it's somewhat trying to do is the whole notion of who controls the narratives that we are told and believe in. And how much power does anyone or any one of us collectively or individually have to write that narrative and to rewrite that narrative?
I read in the New York Times today about the protests in Colorado of the teachers and high school students who are protesting against the school board's curriculum change to make it very anti-protest, patriotic, glorifying capitalism, no racism, no slavery, not totally, but really glossing over it.
Yeah.
And they're protesting against it. So it's
no
interesting,
science,
who has control of the narrative.
We're back to this, saying no, we can't teach theory of evolution again. Scopes. It's what? We're back to this again? Yeah, it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. But we've been here before, as you can see. We've been here before, and it's changed before, and it's cyclical before, and what makes it change is that someone says, okay, this narrative is screwed up. We're not going to have the narrative. When I, When I was a kid, I got yelled at because I tried to go to a bathroom that was marked for colored. I was a kid. This is in my lifetime. I got pulled back by my father, my racist, homophobic father, who I think secretly liked young black men personally, but we won't go there. But because that's like that Southern senator who was the most racist homophobic. I forget his name. I blocked it out. But he was racist and homophobic, and they found out that he was picking up young black boys. It's like, oh wow, yeah, okay, yeah. Let's talk about that one for a while. But this was in my lifetime. In my life, I remember the Freedom Riders as a kid. I remember hearing about them. I was there, falling into the reflecting pool. That narrative was changed. That narrative was said, we do not accept this narrative. That was a narrative that was in the society as a narrative and as a fact and as a whole thing that was like, that was the narrative. And that narrative got changed. So when I see all the little things about trying to change the narrative, like back to some of that stuff, it's like, No, that narrative was not a good narrative. Not for a country that says it's trying to be what the country is. But it's like, who controls the narrative? What narratives are given to you? Why are they given to you? Who benefits from it? Who benefits from the narrative? And it's like, you look at these plays too, and you're saying, who's benefit from this narrative? Why are these narratives? Seneca was there, and there's a disagreement about Seneca, whether he was just appeasing, the kind of Roman sensibility, or whether he was trying to say, even what Euripides is saying, that he picked up on this one thing where Euripides talking about passion, and Seneca says, yes, that's what I want to talk about in my plays. I want to show where passion, unbridled passion, gets you. Now, in the court, did they have that Greek, at least in Athens, people were going, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, maybe we should be looking at this. There was a segment of the population that was still going, okay, yeah, Euripides, we don't want to hear this, we don't want to know this, but we know this. We pretend we don't know this, but we kind of know this, and you're reminding us that we do know this. Whereas the whole debate that scholars have about Seneca and the reaction in the court was, did the court really go, oh man, right, Medea, she's kind of messed up, oh, we kind of do this thing too, and maybe we should look at themselves? Or did they just go, oh yeah, that was cool?
Yeah.
Right? And they probably went, oh yeah, that was cool. Because if they'd had the ability, if he was trying to get them to look at themselves and change the narrative, it didn't work. And Nero at some point saying, I know what you're trying to do. You're going to kill yourself, okay? We're going to get rid of you. And he does. Yes. Yeah. But he was Nero's tutor, So he's trying to educate him still. He was his teacher. So he's writing these plays. So it's an interesting thing in terms of like how these works have a point of view and a perspective and an objective. And it is about narratives. And all these plays are narratives. They're narratives that are given to society at the time to say, I'm either a delivery system for what the society is trying to say, or I'm a mirror for what, to reflect what you are. When we get to naturalism, Chekhov is going to say, I'm just writing these plays so you can look at them yourselves and see how trivial and stupid, your little concerns are. You're going to look, so this is a mirror. Brecht is going to say, no, theater isn't a mirror. Theater is a hammer. Theater is a hammer of ideas and new narratives, and looking at it, that's not like, it's not a mirror. It's like we're going to say new ideas, and we're going to smash things up a bit, and we're going to change things. So these writers and the intentionality behind all these plays, is going to be shaped by who they are, what their perspective was, what their own personal lens was on the world, but also the society that they're living in that's shaping them, and how they want to reflect that society, and what the narrative is. Because whether it's a myth that is talking about how you incorporate a female deity from a local area that you've basically colonized, and how you incorporate that into your own cosmology, that's a narrative. that's trying to have an effect. If it's a story of a woman who succumbs to passion and kills her children, which should be abhorrent, even if these other things weren't abhorrent, this should be abhorrent. Like when we get to a dollhouse, it's not that a woman leaves her husband. That made it the door slam that was heard around the world. It was that a mother leaves her children. That somehow that's the last bastion of, like, you know, morality. You can do things, but you don't do things to your children. Even bad people don't do things to their children. Even they understand that that's a moral line you don't cross. John Ford in the Jacobean times going to say, it's like when he sort of rewrites Romeo and Juliet into "'Tis pity she's a whore." He's going to say, what's the last bastion of morality, maybe in this time that's not so moral? Incest, right? Incest is the last. So I'm going to make these lovers, Romeo and Juliet, spin the story of Romeo and Juliet with an incestuous couple. But when we think, oh, incest, that's the worst, they're the most moral people on the stage, even though they're supposedly committing the most immoral act. So it's kind of, you know, what the ideas of the society are, and what's being talked to, and what the narrative that's being played with is. So it's interesting in terms of when we look, you know, the whole idea of theater history for me is that if you can look at a text, if you can put that text in context of the writer and the society and and analyze it the way you've been doing, then you can look at the narratives that surround you and you can analyze them. And this goes all the way to what commercials do. You know, people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to research commercials. What does it appeal to? You know, how's sex used? What is it like? Cars. I think car commercials are such a reflection of the society. Is the car commercial saying you're responsible to the environment? It was for 3 seconds. It was. Do you remember? There were car commercials like, and you're environmental, it doesn't use this much gas. And then,
It was like for 3 seconds.
what?
It's so true. It was for like.
And now what are the car, I think we're back to like luxury. Speed, luxury, you're part of this.
Space for families.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the most.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm sorry, I got
what is being sold to you? How is it being sold? Why is it being sold? Who is benefiting from it being sold? And it can be material things, it can be ideas, it can be the weapons of mass distraction that some of us were talking about. It was something Gabriel Burns said, the first Iraq war, when we were up there, and he says, we don't have to worry about weapons of mass destruction in this country. What we need to worry about is weapons of mass distraction. Like, if something's going on, what are we being to look at? You know, oh, gee, yeah, the beheadings, you know, these things, you know, that are of ISIS and these beheadings. Okay. But what's really going on? What is going on that we're not looking at? While we're being said, oh, look at this, worry about this, want this, define your identity this way, define your success this way. Let's make it really hard for you to really be educated. Let's make it even harder for certain other people to be educated. There's a reason for this. We have a little stamp that says the system is not broken, it's fixed. And that to me is like Ben & Jerry's. Like made them because they're like Vermont, you know, and they're like, you know, they've been sold now to somebody else. But
What stamp are you talking about?
it's a stamp that says the system is not broken, it's fixed.
What stamp?
It's just a stamp that's been circulating that some people are using to stamp things like money.
Oh.
You might get a dollar bill that has a stamp on it that says the system is not broken, it's fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ben and Jerry's
Cool.
has them.
Yeah, Ben & Jerry's was giving them out to, like, you know, activists and social justice groups and things like that. They were just sending boxes of these stamps. And there's another box of stamps that they said, like don't use this money for, you know, to fund political campaigns or like.
Use it to buy Ben & Jerry's.
Use it to buy Ben & Jerry's. Yeah. Oh, they didn't go that far. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, but there you see? You see that?
Yeah.
That's the analysis. It's like, what is
Yeah.
really going on? It's like the famous phrase, follow the money, you know, which is like, if you follow, like, why things are happening, why things are put into motion, who is benefiting from it? It's probably not us.
Could you, real quick, sorry.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
we're about to end,
Yeah.
but could you elaborate how the story of Medea was reflective of the time that it was written in?
Yes, that's a really good thing. I will say that again. So, Euripides' Medea is in a time where even though Athens is doing acts that can be morally questionable, the theater is still the seeing place. The theater is still criticizing the very culture that is supporting it. They might not like it. They might show their disapproval by not awarding it first prize, but it's happening. He's not being censored. He's saying what he needs to say. Aristophanes is writing plays in old comedy, which we'll talk about next week. The difference between old comedy and middle comedy and new comedy is reflective of the political situation in Athens. It might be gung-ho war, pro-war politically in Athens at this time. They might be starting to lose the war, so it's unpatriotic to criticize the war. But in the theaters, the war is still being criticized, obliquely by being set in the Trojan War, right? The actions of Athens wiping out this island, enslaving the women and children are reflected in the Trojan women. It's not the Trojan women that he's really talking about. It's the Militaean women he's talking about. But it's still the seeing place. Athens is still kind of going, okay, let's look into ourselves. This is about us. We're seeing the theater, but we're seeing ourselves. The characters are having a moment of self-recognition. Self-recognition is still something that's at the core of it. In Rome, Seneca is trying to say, look at this, look what happens when you just do crazy, passionate things, There's a consequence to that.
Okay.
Meanwhile, it's not being performed in the public theaters. The people in Rome are watching in the Colosseum, watching gladiators kill each other, watching, races in the Circus Maximus. There's bread and circuses in Rome. It's a big thing about how do you distract the population. You give them bread and circuses. That comes from Rome. It's like you feed them, but you give them circuses to go to. It's not the theater, the seeing place of the Greek theater. So Medea is not being played for the public to look at themselves and look at their, Medea is Nero. It's being read to Nero in the court. Maybe Seneca is trying to obliquely say, see yourself. But that's not what's happening. They're probably going, oh, that was cool. Oh, yeah, I love the way she killed her kids. Yeah. Yeah.
So in terms of the audience, would you say with Seneca there isn't that religious, civic honor and duty?
No, because it's not the
just
audience.
entertainment.
No, it's entertainment.
Okay.
It's entertainment for the court. And Seneca might be trying to sort of like put some, medicine in the sugar,
Right.
but it's their entertainment. It's their entertainment. They're sort of saying, oh yeah, the Greek plays, we're Roman and we're connected. We're civilized because we still, we're doing these Greek plays. But he's trying probably, and this is the big debate, whether he was just pandering to their taste or whether he was trying to do something different. I think because he pulls those lines, from Euripides, about passion and things like that, that he actually was, and because he was a Stoic himself, so I figure, well, his own personal beliefs in the midst of this had to inform his intentionality, if that makes sense. Whether or not his intentionality was successful, which it was not. These plays did not have the impact in the Roman court at all. It was just entertainment. And he might have said, oh, I want the audience to come away with, thinking about where passion gets you, and all they came away with that. Well, wasn't that cool when she threw her son off the roof right in front of Jason? So that's the difference. That's the difference. The Greek audience is going, wow, that's a rough place to be. And yeah, women, yeah. And Medea, wow, I haven't really thought of that. I don't know if it's going to influence, but maybe it does, and maybe we need to look at ourselves, and we're pretty far down this road, but, Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So, the Seneca things become just an entertainment, even though I think he hoped for them to be more Other questions? Other questions of where we are from, on the ramp to this with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now are we at the point where all these plays are now entertainment instead of like mandating for people to go?
We're starting to, when we go to Aristophanes and the comedies, we're gonna cross that line.
Okay.
Yeah, when we go into comedy, we're gonna cross that line.
Okay.
Yeah, because Greek tragedy is gonna end when the Spartans defeat Athens. That's gonna be the end of it.
Okay.
Very soon, very soon.
I'm just wondering if you think that there ever could be again, or if there are any examples of just this seeing place, this civic duty of
Yeah.
in our society today. If
Yeah,
that
I think you guys are gonna do it.
Do you think there's
I'm
any?
so serious. I think you guys are gonna do it. Because you guys, everyone tries to go, millennials like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and they want you to, that's a role that you're being cast in. Do you understand that? That's a narrative that's being written for you by other people. There's a reason for that. Do you understand that? You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to be distracted. You're supposed to be like, who are you? You're like, yeah. I mean, what's the reflection of the mirror that's being given to you? I'm curious. How you feel yourself being reflected?
Entitled,
Entitled?
just the generation, the
Lazy.
smartphones, the internet,
Impatient.
Facebook.
Lazy.
Distracted,
Only
lazy,
concerned with like
impatient.
trivial.
Only concerned with
Kardashian.
Reality
trivial.
TV.
Kardashian,
reality.
The
So
system
family,
is not
family.
broken, it's fixed. There is a reason you are being handed a narrative. Do you understand that? You can choose your own narrative. How old do you think Occupy Wall Street was, really? People in their 20s.
Yeah.
Out just the other day on the corner of Wall Street and Broadway. If you look at the faces in that crowd, they're not, there's some of my generation because we're this, the
The
ramp
last
of the
cycle.
60s, the last cycle, which makes sense because it's, I'm headed into, I used to be like mother's age. I'm starting to head towards granny now, I used to be auntie. Now I'm just sort of headed towards granny. It's like, okay, I could be your granny at this point. Not quite, but soon enough. I'm a little younger because I was a kid during the 60s, and I sort of thought, oh, wow, I grew up in Washington, D.C. and surrounded by, civil rights and anti-war and whatever. And I thought, yeah. And the image is like, I thought, yeah, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to do this. And then I was, oh, wait, I'm doing this. This is like, suddenly it's disco. I'm 18, 19, I'm going, yeah. And it's like, oh, no, it's disco. Wait, what? The 70s, what? So I'm a little younger. So, not quite